In this video, we have the patch 5.08 tier list. What's going on, ProGuides family? It's your host, Sergeant Frost. A brand new act calls for a brand new agent tier list. And the best part about this one is that we can finally place the brand new agent Harbor into the list. This video is going to be chock full of info on how all these agents stack up with and against Harbor, so you're definitely going to want to watch till the end. Also, before we jump into the S tier, we wanted to announce that AIM Labs has just developed a top quality tracker called Valorant Stat Center that analyzes your games with data that only pros had in the past. Not only that, Stat Center includes valuable metrics like trade kill percentages, economy management, and even a new metric called Delta Damage, which tracks your impact. So if you want access to revolutionary data, make sure to click the link in the description and download AIM Labs' newest Valorant Stat Center today. Before we proceed into the video, let's get to our disclaimer. Since there weren't any agent changes this patch, there won't be a lot of tier list changes in terms of agent rankings. But since there is a new agent in the game now, this list will focus more on how the agents could function with or against the new agent Harbor. It will be really good to see how the agents either synergize or counter Harbor, as that is info that everyone should know going into their Act 3 ranked games. Now let's move into the S tier. At the top of the S tier, starting off Act 3, we have the Queen Initiator Fade. Fade is the ultimate do-it-all initiator right now. She can frag out with the help of her utility, while still using her abilities to gather info without having to remove herself from the action. Fade is able to be a part of the fight at all times while still getting the info for her team. She has the capabilities of being a fully functioning agent while still doing her initiator info gathering duties. On top of that, she has enough CC in her kit to be a decent sight holder on defense as well. She's the uncontested queen right now in the meta, and she will continue to be unless the devs decide to nerf her in the future. Chamber is still one of the highest priority agents to have right now in the meta, despite the shifting in rankings between the Sentinels and the Duelist agents. On the surface, it seems like Chamber gets countered by Harbor because Chamber is all about his guns, and Harbor has multiple tools that block bullets. But at the end of the day, that's only one small aspect of the game, and Chamber can still use his mobility with his TP to get to angles that Harbor cannot block out. Also, Chamber can teleport out of areas that Harbor decides to use his ult in, so it won't be too much of an issue for Chamber to deal with Harbor in the case that he gets really strong in the meta. Right now in the early days of the Act 3 meta, it seems like Viper and Harbor don't function in the same way, despite having similar controller kits. At the moment, it looks like Viper is still here to stay in the meta. She appears to be more consistent, and she has so much more meta presence that she overshadows Harbor's presence in the current meta, and that's mainly due to the maps that she's really good on. If you decide to run double controller on Viper maps, you could use Harbor as a second controller to bring the wall versatility to a map that Viper doesn't have. Viper as an agent is relatively unaffected by agent changes as of late, and she's cruising in the meta as she dominates on the maps that she calls home. KO is in the top of A tier because he is still generally really useful, especially in ranked. The flash changes a couple of patches ago made him a lot less potent in most situations due to the right-click nerf. But at the same time, people have gotten very used to having him around to counter agents and strategies. When a new agent comes out, KO has a small boost of utility because he can cancel said agent's utility so that you won't have to deal with it at the time. KO's suppression is still arguably the best piece of CC in the game next to flashes, so having him in your team comp is always beneficial in the solo queue environment. REYES is in a unique situation right now as a duelist. The reason being is that she functions decently well with Harbor. In fact, she synergizes well with his potential playmaking due to her quick satchel tricks. What we mean by that is that REYES' double satchel doesn't really get slowed down by his walls, so you still have the freedom of mobility when working with him. REYES also gets to have more information on where to throw her nades and where to path into sight when Harbor uses his ultimate. This makes a REYES Harbor combo on attack quite potent if both players can coordinate their abilities well with each other. Right now, Phoenix does not function super well with Harbor. A lot of the util Phoenix has really doesn't mesh well with his kit. However, with Harbor's smokes, Phoenix has the capability to flash through his cove and his walls, and that gives him more potential flash plays to work with. Because Phoenix gets slowed running through his walls, there aren't many aggressive plays he can use by utilizing his walls. But if Harbor's doing normal controller duties, he should be fine. Phoenix is chilling where he's at right now. He's a very easy duelist to use that's low risk, high reward. He's an agent that every player should be able to bring into ranked at any time. Neon right now is in a very similar situation to REYES. She has the potential to both synergize and counter Harbor well. Harbor's wall doesn't really stop Neon's slide, which means Neon has a lot more room to work with around his utility. She can also use her stun to stun corners around his utility to make it easier to clear areas around the map. Neon can counter Harbor, however, by speed blitzing him when he's trying to put out his abilities, which creates windows of timing where Neon can kill him before he can get his gun back out after using an ability. JETT is a do-it-all agent right now. She's not the best at specializing in one area of expertise anymore, as there are more specialized agents that have taken up the roles of AWPing and fast-paced entry, but she can still hold her own around the map with the tools she already has in her kit. JETT, like the other movement-based duelists, can play around Harbor's utility well. She doesn't have the same restrictions like other agents when running through Harbor's walls, but unfortunately she doesn't have any utility to work with Harbor's utility or capitalize off the space he creates with his abilities. First things first, Omen is still one of the most reliable smokers in the game despite all the fanfare surrounding the other controllers at the moment. He can fend for himself since he has a flash and mobility built into his kit, and he's a stable controller that can be used for most maps currently. Since Harbor doesn't seem as compelling as a main controller, Omen doesn't have too much competition on the main smoke agent front. Harbor and Omen have potential to work well with each other by playing off of Harbor's utility. Omen can flash through his walls to create surprise plays, and he can TP past his walls to make sneaky lurk plays too. Unfortunately, Sova has fallen to the bottom of A tier and mainly because of the new addition of Harbor. Assuming Harbor becomes more commonly used, Sova is going to have a really hard time synergizing with Harbor in a lot of situations. Harbor's wall is so free moving that there is higher risk of making a mistake when it comes to trying to gather info on a part of the map. If the wall is slightly curved or imperfect, it's too easy for someone to slip by. That makes it very dangerous for Sova to work with Harbors, on top of Fade being a bigger staple in the info gathering game over Sova. Reyna is at the top of B tier because her flash is really strong right now. It's quite easy to create chaos around the map when she places it really well. In a way, it's very consistent at clearing angles that people are already trying to hold. Reyna does not have too much potential right now with Harbor, and there isn't really anything in her kit that could synergize extremely well with him right now. Reyna's on the up and up in the meta, and let's see where she can go from here on out. Yoru's kit is borderline crazy right now when utilized well. Yoru has a potentially easy time because he doesn't really get affected by Harbor. Because of his mobility, he will have an easier time to play around and get around Harbor's utility and abilities. Yoru is really complex, but he has a lot of potential to create chaos. Because of that, he could have a really good time creating chaos with Harbor. But at the same time, Yoru is still too complex of an agent for us to give ideas to you on how to play him. It will only take trial and error to truly figure out his kit right now. Skye will have a decent time playing with Harbor because she can pop flash past his walls and out of his cove. If Skye can time her abilities right with a good Harbor, this duo could be nigh unstoppable once they get a good rhythm and flow going in game. Skye on her own is still a B tier agent without Harbor though. She's outshined by KO and Fade at the moment in the meta. But don't forget, a good Skye player will still wreak havoc on a game regardless. Now onto the agent we've all been waiting for, Harbor. Harbor does not have enough meta presence right now to kick Viper out of the meta yet. It doesn't seem like Harbor is really strong as a solo controller in his current form. He's more of a controller-initiator hybrid. It seems like that will give him more say in being used because initiators are currently the wave. Harbor could be a great agent for fast executes because he has a lot of utility that can create plays. His wall also acts as a space creator along with being a sight denial tool as well. Using his wall can be very interesting. Therefore, he seems like he can work really well in fast-paced comps. His cove has the potential to create really strong lurk setups and surprise plays too, despite what most people think a controller is meant to do. Keep an eye on Harbor. He isn't the top dog yet, but his kit could bring him up the rank of agents in the game if the devs decide to buff him in the future. Despite the intro of Harbor into the game, Brimstone is chilling with where he's at in the current meta. He has his specific uses, but he's not the best overall controller by any means. Brim's speed buff can make it so that you could run through Harbor's walls without negative impact. And his ultimate can be used really well in conjunction with Harbor's ultimate to flush people out as well. At the same time, Harbor is a fast-paced controller and Brim is too, which means they do have the potential to play really well off each other. KJ is being demoted because Harbor might spell trouble for her and Cipher in the coming meta. Harbor poses a potential threat to how Killjoy is allowed to play, because Harbor creates walls and smokes that push players out of their positions, and Killjoy's abilities will now be much more exploitable, so she's gonna have to be careful about where she places and uses her setups. Harbor's ultimate will also ruin KJ's deep sight setups because it will be able to flush you out of your position deep in back sight. Sage might synergize well with Harbor in the sense that they both have similar utility sets. Therefore, their playstyles might function well with each other when used in harmony. Also, their two walls when used together can be very hard to break, which makes planting and defusing the spike a lot safer for your team if you're able to utilize them well. Outside of her potential Harbor synergy, Sage is still a great agent for solo queue because of her wall, heals, revive, and slows obviously too. Her kit is geared towards taking control over the pace of play in a match, and that is an attribute that is highly coveted in solo queue play. Astro's not great as a controller because of her earlier nerf this year, but she still managed to find a way to be somewhat good on Pearl. There is a chance Harbor could have synergy with Astro on this map, but more or less so it's so that she can use her utility to support Harbor's playmaking. Outside of those circumstances, Astro is not a very useful agent in the meta and other controllers have pick priority over her in every other non-Pearl situation there is. Closing out the C tier we have Breach. Breach could be a really good agent to work with Harbor, because Harbor can get the necessary information in order for Breach to use his stuns to lock onto enemies in suspected areas of the map. Because of that, Breach could work well with Harbor for creating fast execute plays. He also directly supports Harbor because his flashes aren't really affected by his walls. The new agent Harbor is starting to spell trouble for Cipher and KJ. Because Harbor creates walls, Cipher isn't going to get the full benefit out of his cam and tripwires, mainly because Harbor can safely use his tools to play around them. Outside of the Harbor dilemma, Cipher still has his own problems of being a mediocre agent in his own right. The devs did promise that they are looking at buffing him in the near future, so let's hope that he gets the help he needs really soon. And with that being said, that's our patch 5.08 tier list. Let us know whether you agree or disagree in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been your host Sergeant Frost, and good luck on the new grind this act.